Thinking skills is one of the sections on the New South Wales Selective Schools placement test, which a lot of people find fairly difficult. And so in this video today, we're going to look at two common questions that we see on the thinking skills section of the exam year after year. And we're going to go through exam strategies that you can use to make answering these questions a lot more accurate, so it's easier to get them correct, but also then to improve the speed at which you go about answering these questions as well. So let's jump to the questions now. What are they? First one is strengthening arguments. So these questions, what they do is they give you a passage of information and you have to pick the statement that most strengthens the argument. So that's the first type. The second type we'll be looking at today is weakening arguments. So you can see both of these questions, they're really testing the same thing. They're testing your ability to choose a statement that either strengthens or weakens an argument. Now, the best place to start with this is it's all about arguments. It's all about either strengthening an argument or weakening an argument. And so the question really comes, what is an argument? What is an argument? These questions are all centered around argument. And so what is an argument? Now, the best way to think about it is that an argument can be broken down into two different parts. There's a conclusion and there's reasoning. And the reasoning actually leads to the conclusion. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at this little passage here, and we're going to practice finding the conclusion and the reasoning and understanding what the difference is between them and which one of them is really important to understand. Because one of them, if you understand it, it makes understanding these questions and getting them correct a lot easier. So it says here, Lucas is debating whether he should learn a musical instrument, but is concerned it will take too much time away from his studies. Now we're looking for Maya's argument, so we can kind of leave that sentence around Lucas. It's interesting, but it's not really relevant. His friend Maya says learning an instrument could actually help you with school. That's kind of her point, isn't it? It's what she's trying to say. Learning an instrument, it could actually help you at school. You're concerned about if it's going to take away time from your studies, but there's no need to be concerned because it could actually help you at school rather than take away. Studies have shown that practicing music can improve concentration, memory, and even mathematical skills, which could benefit your studies. And so this first sentence here, this is what we would call the conclusion. The conclusion is the main point which is being made. It's the main point, the main idea. In this case, the main idea is that learning an instrument, it could help you in school. Now, when you find the conclusion, just finding it is one thing, but it's really important to understand the key words. What are the key parts of this conclusion? Now, I would say his friend Maya says that's not really that important, so I'm going to get rid of that. Learning an instrument, so the fact that we're learning an instrument is important. This isn't about learning a sport, about learning how to read, about learning how to cook. It's specifically an instrument. So that's one key word. Second one is that it can help you. So learning an instrument can help you, but specifically in school. Now, where a lot of people would go wrong here is they would obviously pick up that it's about learning an instrument and that can help you, but they wouldn't see that last word there, or it wouldn't really hit home. They wouldn't really think, okay, this is all about how learning an instrument can specifically help you in school. And so if we were looking for a way to strengthen the argument, if there was a statement that was about how learning an instrument is amazing and it helps you in all these amazing, beautiful ways, but they're not actually linked to school, that would not be the correct answer. And so understanding the keywords is important because I guarantee one of the tricks, one of these ones here that a lot of people will pick which won't be correct, will be something that backs up the fact that learning an instrument is really good, but it doesn't have anything to do with school. So keywords is really important. So the second thing then is, well, what's this sentence here called? You can see this sentence, it's kind of like the evidence. It's the evidence backing up the conclusion. Studies have shown that practicing music can improve concentration, memory, and even mathematical skills, which could benefit your studies. It's the evidence. It's the stats, the studies that back up the conclusion. And so what you can see here is, in this case, this is what we would call the reasoning. It's the reasoning why we have the conclusion. And so every single argument you see, it can be broken into two key components, two key parts. The reasoning and then the conclusion. The conclusion is the main point, the main idea. The main idea is that learning an instrument could actually help you. Then the reasoning is the why. Why is that the case? Why should we believe that? Well, we should believe that because studies have shown that practicing music can improve concentration, memory, and even math skills, which could benefit your studies. So now what we're looking for is we're looking for which statement most strengthens Maya's argument. And when they say what strengthens her argument, they're really asking what would strengthen her conclusion. First one, learning an instrument builds resilience and emotional expression, enriching life outside of academics. Now, this is exactly what we saw. Maya's argument, it's about how learning an instrument could help you with school. This is about how learning an instrument is really good. It builds resilience, emotional expression, enriching life outside of academics, outside of school, in other words. And so A is incorrect for that reason, because it's not directly linked to her conclusion. Now, often they won't use the exact same terminology in the statements. What that means is they'll use different words. So for example, they didn't say enriching life outside of school, because that would have been too easy. They said enriching life outside of academics. Academics is another way of saying school, essentially. So A wasn't correct because it wasn't linked enough to how it could help you at school. B, learning an instrument helps students express their emotions and relieve stress. Interesting. So again, this is a benefit of learning an instrument, but it's not linked to school. So although it sounds pretty good, it's a pretty good answer. It's a benefit of learning an instrument. And you could say that expressing their emotions and relieving stress could help you at school. It doesn't mention school in the answer. And so I would say this one's a question mark. It could be a good option, but because it's not directly linked to school, I have a sense that it might not be correct. C, Lucas's school offers a music program that students can join after school. Now this one is just not really relevant. The fact that he can easily join a music program doesn't back up the conclusion that learning an instrument can help you in school. So C is not correct. And then finally D, music students score an average of over 31 points higher in reading and maths in years 11 and 12. Now this one directly backs up her conclusion. Maya says, what's Maya's conclusion? What's her main point? It is that learning an instrument can help you in school. This one is a perfect example of some reasoning, a reason why that's true. It's actually true because music students, they score 31 points higher, not only in reading, but also in maths in years 11 and year 12. And so if you want to improve in school, you should probably start playing a musical instrument. And so D was the right one here. So key takeaways, there's a few key things to focus on from this question that will help you with any of these questions. You want to understand an argument can be broken into two key parts. There's the conclusion, which is the main idea, the main point that they're trying to make. And then there's a reasoning, which is the evidence, the stats, the figures, the reasons why that we should believe the conclusion. Your goal, if you want to get really confident answering these questions, you want to get really skilled at finding the conclusion. If you can find the conclusion and you can find the key words in the conclusion, it's easy then to pick which ones of these back up the conclusion and which ones maybe don't quite as much. So the same strategy applies here for weakening arguments. It just works in reverse. So the same thing again. Step number one, what is the conclusion? With the availability of advanced calculators and computer software, spending years studying maths might seem unnecessary. These tools can solve complex equations, perform statistical analysis, and create graphs with ease, allowing people to complete tasks without understanding the underlying math. Therefore, as technology continues to improve, it could be argued that spending time mastering math skills is becoming obsolete. Now, this one wasn't quite as clear-cut. The other one, it said, Maya thinks this. Maya says this, and it had her conclusion. This one, it requires a little bit more analysis to find the conclusion. And so you want to notice here that in this one, the conclusion came right at the start. Maya says, blah, 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 blah. But it's not always going to be at the start. In this case, there's one sentence, there's actually one word that gives away where the conclusion is. Have a think about it. Think about what that word could be. What word could hint that the conclusion is about to be made? Have a think about it. Now I'd say the key word is therefore. Therefore. Because if you think about it, why would you use the word therefore? You've had the whole paragraph, we've been saying blah, 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 and therefore this. That's what you would say when you're trying to make your point. I've said all this stuff, therefore, this is my main point. And so in this case, it says, therefore, as technology continues to improve, and so I'd say that's probably a part of the conclusion, it could be argued that spending time mastering math skills is becoming obsolete. And so I would say there's a few key parts to this conclusion. One is that as technology continues to improve, so assuming that technology continues to improve, spending time mastering math skills, so math skills in particular, not science skills, not English skills, is becoming obsolete. Now, obsolete is quite a strong word. Obsolete essentially means irrelevant, useless, not needed at all. And so it's not saying that learning math skills is less useful, less valuable, maybe not as impactful as it once was. it's saying that learning math skills is completely a waste of time and something that there's just no point you even bothering to do, which is a big statement, but that's the conclusion. So this here was the conclusion. This here was then the reasoning. I'd say this here is probably the main part of the reasoning. That's pretty clear. Conclusion, as technology continues to improve, spending time mastering maths is becoming irrelevant. It's not needed. Why? Well, tools like calculators and computer software, so this is probably real clear part of the reasoning as well. Because we have calculators and computer software, studying maths isn't really needed. We can use these tools to solve complex equations, perform analysis, create graphs. We don't need to do it in our heads, is what they're saying here. Now, this time we're actually looking for what most weakens the argument. What would most weaken the argument? So the conclusion, which is what we're trying to weaken, is that as technology continues to improve, who cares about maths? We don't need to learn it. It's a waste of time. So what would most refuse that? How can we prove that actually math skills are needed? Despite the fact that technology is continuing to improve, we need math skills more than ever, or there's some value in learning math skills. Now, number A, computer software remains extremely error-prone despite ongoing efforts to improve it. Now, this one, a lot of people often pick because people are like, well, if computer software remains error-prone, then maybe that means we should learn maths. But does this mention maths skills at all? Does it mention the number one keyword of this conclusion, math skills? It doesn't. And so for that reason, it doesn't mention math skills. If it said math skills are needed because they can help to pick up errors with computer software, that would be a better option, but it doesn't say that. It doesn't mention the keyword, so not correct. B, understanding maths concepts. So math concepts is another way of saying math skills, I would say. Helps people detect errors that technology might miss. Now, right away you can see this has a lot of the keywords. It's got math skills in it. It's got technology in it. And it makes sense. The conclusion is that maths, who cares about it? It's not needed. As technology improves, it's a waste of time. This statement says, well, actually, it's not a waste of time because technology will make mistakes. If we have good math skills, if we understand maths concepts, we'll be able to pick up those mistakes more easily. And so this statement here really does weaken it. So that's definitely going to be the correct answer. We'll have a quick look at the other ones. Many people find learning maths highly challenging but enjoyable. Doesn't matter, not needed. And then D, technology is advancing rapidly, making it easier to perform calculations without manual input. Again, that is not the correct answer. So key thing again, what do you want to do when you want to see one of these questions? Because that really is the key to success on this exam. It's not about just doing millions of practice questions. I know a lot of people, they rush and they get tons of practice questions and they often get given a lot of mock exams by tutoring centers and by different people, which is good to do practice questions. It's definitely the key thing you want to do to improve, but you need to do something before that, which is you need to figure out for each section of the exam, what questions can you expect to see? And you want to have an exam strategy that you can use for how to solve the question. For every single question that we can expect to see, you want to have a method, steps that you follow every single time for how to answer that question to get it right, but also get it right a lot faster than everyone else. And with this question, what you want to do, step one, find the conclusion. What is the conclusion? In this case, it was as technology continues to improve, spending time mastering math skills is becoming obsolete. You want to identify the keywords in the conclusion. Because if we didn't do that here, we might have got tricked. Keywords was technology, math skills, obsolete. And then you can use that to find the correct answer. And so that's the method that I would use. If you use that method, it doesn't really matter how hard these questions get, you're going to be able to do really well with them. Now, the key skill then really to focus on is being able to spot the conclusion really quickly, being really fast at spotting the conclusion. And what we might actually do is I'm just going to quickly get the slide up here. We're going to do a little bit of practice of spotting the conclusion on ones where the questions are kind of hard. They're not easy. We're going to look at some super hard ones. So let me just get that up now. Okay, so here it is. So this question is generally fairly difficult. I've used this question before with students who are actually quite a bit older. So this question appears on exams, which students often see even in year 8. Now, this is a question which year 8 students find hard. So how will people sitting in year 6 find it? They'll probably find it fairly challenging as well. And from when I've done this with year 6s, generally about 20% of people get this particular one correct. So let's see how you go. We have just done some training, so I'd expect you all to be a little bit better. But we know the first step is find the conclusion. What is the conclusion? It says a traditional model of higher education must undergo radical transformation to remain viable. To me, this looks like maybe the conclusion. The conclusion is that the traditional model of higher education, so the traditional model is one part of higher education. Higher education essentially means university, must undergo radical transformation. So radical transformation suggests it needs to change a lot. Not a little bit, not a tiny bit, not maybe a bit, but a huge amount to remain viable. Now, remain viable just means to remain even a thing. If they don't make radical changes, they're going to be dead, and they're going to be dead fast. So studies show that 60% of jobs, so that we know this studies show sentence here is going to be the reasoning. Studies, stats, evidence, that's the reasoning statement. It's the why. Studies show that 60% of jobs will be altered by automation within 2 decades, while major employers like Google now accept industry certifications instead of degrees. And then this here again is some more reasoning. Online platforms offer specialized training at a fraction of the cost. So we can see that if we want to weaken the argument, what argument are we trying to weaken? We're trying to weaken the conclusion that the traditional model of higher education must undergo radical transformation to remain viable. Okay, so let's have a look. So the first one here is that research shows university graduates develop more adaptable skills than those with online certifications, making them better equipped for workplace automation. Now, this is looking pretty good to me. So what it's saying is that our conclusion was that the traditional model of higher education must undergo radical transformation to remain viable. But this here is saying, well, that's not really the case, because university students, who are people who attended higher educational institutions, they actually develop more adaptable skills than those with some sort of online certification. So they're better equipped for the changes that are coming. So if anything, the traditional model of higher education doesn't need to change at all. If anything, it's perfectly positioning people for the future. That's what this first one here is suggesting. So A is probably going to be correct. Let's have a quick look. Because we started with A, it makes this one a bit easier. B, historical predictions about technological disruption of education have consistently overestimated the pace of change. This is what we'd call a irrelevant sentence. Often, some of the tricks, they're just going to be sentences that are irrelevant. They may be true, they may be not true. You might have your own opinion, but they're not relevant. So that's wrong. C, companies that accept certifications instead of degrees spend 40% more on employee training programs. Now, again, this is kind of in the right direction, but does it link back to the keyword of higher education? It doesn't link back to the fact that traditional models of higher education, they must change a lot. Not really. It's not really linked enough to that. And so this one's not linked enough to the keywords. And D, most online learning platforms have completion rates below 20% compared to 80% for traditional universities. Again, this one is just actually arguing the opposite. It would actually strengthen the argument rather than weaken. And so A was the correct answer here. And so once again, you can see the steps we need to go through. Step 1, find the conclusion. Step 2, find the keywords. Step 3, look at the statements. Pick the one that, in this case, most weakens the conclusion and includes the keywords, which A did do. So that's kind of the key takeaways from this video. I'd recommend doing a bit of practice on these question types. If you do practice and if you follow those steps, these questions, whenever they appear on the exam, they should be pretty easy. You should be able to get them right every single time. And they do come up quite a bit. And so hopefully, if you watch this video, you learn the strategy, you do practice, these questions are ones where when they come up, you should think, easy, I've got these ones down pat. They're going to be a few easy marks for you on the exam. And so hopefully you enjoyed today's session and picked up a few strategies that will help you with the thinking skills section of the exam. I'm going to be releasing more videos on thinking skills, but also the whole placement test in general in terms of how to succeed. If you're looking for my help and the rest of our tutors' help on how to pass and really succeed on the placement test, then you can book in for a call with us below this video. Otherwise, look forward to seeing you in the next video and good luck in your thinking skills preparation.